This is my sawmill, Mighty Mite band sawmill. I did some work on it a little over a year ago. I got a new carburetor and put on it. These valves here control the mill. This one here controls the travel back and forth down the track. And then there's one that goes in here, and that controls this cylinder right here, which raises and lowers the mill to adjust the depth of cut. And then this one is just a simple valve that just applies pressure to a small cylinder on the end of the carriage there that tensions the blade. Well, these two solenoids, these two valves, were kind of rough. This one that controls the cylinder up and down, the depth of cut, couldn't get it to go up or down. You'd fool with it quite a bit and get it to go. It wasn't working right. And this one that controls the forward and reverse, it was getting kind of sticky and jerky too. These have a valve body in here that controls the flow of the hydraulic fluid, and then there's solenoids on both ends of them here. And so when you activate this cylinder, that pulls a rod inside that's the valve to one end and allows the fluid to flow one direction. And then when you release the current on this solenoid, it centers and stops the rotation. And then you activate this cylinder and it pulls the rod this way and activates the flow the other direction. Like I said, they were really sticky. They weren't working very well, and they've got good current to them and stuff like that. Anyway, I took them all apart, cleaned out the solenoids real well, and then cleaned the valve body out, polished up the rod in there, figuring that would fix them. Put it all back together, and it worked as bad as it did before. Anyway, I kind of quit working on the machine. I needed to concentrate my efforts on the airplane to get it going, so I kind of just quit working on this and just let it sit here. But what I did do is I looked up trying to find replacements for these valves. Well, these little valves are pretty common in 120 or 220 or 32 volt or 48 volt. But this is a 12 volt system, and they're not very common in a 12 volt, and they're really expensive. They were $400 or $500 a piece. Well, I kept watching and finally found some on eBay that are the same kind of design as these, and I got them for $40 a piece, I think. So I bought two of those brand new. I just come out last night or yesterday to set these up and put this first one on. I run into a little bit of a snag. The screws that hold this down to this distribution block here are not quite long enough. The valve body of the new valves is a little bit deeper than the one on these, so I've got to do a little bit of modification to those to get them to work. So this is the valve that was on the mill. This is the one that controls the carriage up and down for the depth of cut. It's identical to the other one that controls the forward and reverse. See, it's a delta control valve, and there's a schematic of how it works. Anyway, that bolted on to the distributor block, and it had this extension block on there to stand it off. Well, I guess it's got another valve in there too. Anyway, this is the extension block that went on here, and then these screws went through this and screwed it onto the distribution block. This is my new valve, and there's some differences in it. One, instead of having these wires coming out from the solenoids to hook up to, it's actually got a terminal block in there, and of course it's a little bigger, it's heavier bodied, and the body of the valve is thicker, deeper than this body. So these screws do not fit through this block here. Well, I went to town to see if I could get some more screws, some longer screws. These are 3 inches. Well, I figured 4-inch ones would work, but they don't even have the 3-inch ones here in town. And I looked online, and Bolt Depot has them for about $1.50 a piece. But if I order them, it's going to take a week or two before I can get them. And we've got good weather here for the next few days. It's going to be cold, freezing real hard and stuff, but the weather's going to be good. I'd like to get working on this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a counter bore and bore those holes out until I can get enough reach on these screws that they'll reach into the distribution block on the mill. I've got my counter bore chucked up in the drill press, and this is the valve body sitting here. I've got some cutting oil here. I'll go ahead and start drilling those out, or counterbore them out as the case may be. Okay, that stuff don't want to cut. That won't cut. Well, it's hardened, so I guess I'm back to square one. I got to order the screws. So that's not going to be getting done today. As I was finishing up cleaning this valve body up and getting ready to put it away, I got to looking down through these mount holes, and I could see a split down in there part way through it. It looked like they had a roll pin in there. So I got to looking, and sure enough, I could see a little gap in there a little bit where the roll pin didn't go all the way down to meet the seat in there. So I took a punch and put it in there at an angle, and I was able to just hang the edge of it on this roll pin just a little bit, and I was able to drive these out. Pretty sure that's what's keeping me from boring those holes out. So I'm going to go ahead and try this again. I've got everything all set up again here now, and we'll give it another try. I've got a clamp down on the table back here behind this to kind of hold this, keep this from spinning. Oh yeah, going down there now. Yeah, that's going to work. Okay. Now we got it. Now we're cooking with gas. That made all the difference in the world. That thing wouldn't cut through that spring steel of that roll pin at all, but it goes through that cast iron just like it was butter. Cool. That's good. That's good. Now we're back. That's too late now in the day to install this. It's dark outside already. Well, I'll clean this up and it's ready to go for tomorrow. I've got this solenoid valve body set up, just dry fit onto this shuttle valve body, and my screws put through there. And you can see I've got plenty of screw sticking through there now. Without that spring steel in there, that cutter worked pretty good. So that gives me plenty of screw in there to go into the distribution block to hold everything together. Well, the two new solenoid valves are on there and all hooked up. They're all wired in. They look pretty darn good. See how they work. But it's getting too late in the day now. It'll be dark here in a few minutes. So I don't want to start this thing up yet. It's cold out. It's 20 degrees or so out here. It's been all day. It's supposed to get down to 16 tonight. So I need to cover this up and put a heater underneath it to heat it up before I try starting it up. It's set here for a little over a year without running, so I wanted to dump the gas out of it. And I usually try to put gas guard or something in that to keep it fresh, but I didn't do that the last time I did it. I just ran it. I realized I needed to get to working on the airplane, so I just kind of abandoned everything. That lower frame there that the engine sits on is the fuel tank. I just dumped the fuel out of it, and I was glad I did, because there was a bunch of crap in there that came out first. That drain was pretty much plugged up when I first opened it up, so we got the fuel drained out of it and get some fresh fuel in it. Get it warmed up and see if it can't get it started and see how it runs with these new valves on it. Well, it's a nice day today, clear, sunshiny, and it's warmed up to almost 25 degrees. And I've got this little heater we got a few years ago. I think got it from Canadian Tire when we went down through Canada, and I've got it stuck in there for a couple hours now to warm that engine up. We've had sunshine on it here for now. It's about 30 minutes or so now. Help warm it up some more. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put the plug back in the tank and put some fresh gas in there and see if we can't get it running, and see if it'll work now with these new valves on there. Here's that little heater. It's not very big. Made in Canada. It's got even attachment on it that you can slide on. It's meant to put in a vehicle, a car or something, to help warm it up in the cold weather. But a lot of guys get these and like them. They're perfect for using for putting in an airplane engine or something to heat it up in the cold weather, preheat it. It's real small, compact, fits in a small area. But I can't find these online or anything, and I haven't been back to Canada since I bought this one. I'd like to get another one or two of these, or just the right size for fitting in small areas and stuff. Nice little heater. Well, here we go. Let's see what happens. Got my battery hooked up, and I filled the fuel tank up with fresh gas. I turned my hydraulic valve back on. This is a hydraulic tank up here. I was going to try starting it, but it's got a bulb here for pumping fuel up to get it into the carburetor, and that thing was harder than a banker's heart. So I had to get the heat gun out and warm that up enough that I could get pumped up and get the fuel pressure pumped up. So turn the choke on and okay, well, so much for that. Well, I got it running, and as I thought, it was a fuel problem. That primer bulb on there was harder than a banker's heart, and I got the heat gun out, warmed it up enough where I could get fuel going through it. But all the hoses on that are old and hard, but it had a little bit of a leak out of the fuel filter there. There's the fuel filter. It was leaking a little bit of fuel out of that, so it wouldn't hold pressure, wouldn't stay running. Well, I took that fuel line off of there and cut it back. I got enough on there that I had enough slack on there. I could cut it back and try to reposition it. But that fuel filter, it must be for a 3/8 line, and that's a 5/16 line going for the fuel line coming up there to the fuel pump. And I had a heck of a time getting it on there. I was able to force it on there, and then I took the heat gun and heated up the fuel pump and the carburetor. Then I had to heat up that bulb again to get the primer on it, but once I got fuel going through it, it started right up. Well, I let it run and warm up for a little while, and then we'll try the valves and see how they work. Alright, this engine's been running for a while, warming up now. The hydraulic tank reservoir for that is in that framework up overhead. So running this engine, just warming it up, doesn't do anything for the hydraulic fluid. It'll warm up once you start getting the hydraulics moving and stuff. But it's going to be pretty stiff. Well, I'm going to go ahead and run it up and try exercising them a little bit. Carriage lift seems to be working perfectly. It goes up and down smooth as it could be, and it wouldn't do that before. It was hard to get it to switch, to get it to move up and down, then it was real jerky and stuff. So far that seems to be working good. The carriage travel is not working very well. The rollers on the bottom there are froze up. I don't know how much of it's from sitting and how much of it's just got water and everything. It's frozen. The chain is stiff. It's sat there for over a year without being used, and then of course it's frozen now, so it's sticking on that. Well, I'll see if I can't loosen these rollers up. Works better than it did before. The up and down of the carriage of the saw head is working real smooth. That's a lot better than it was before. The carriage travel is kind of rough. Took a little bit to get it going because of the frozen bearings and stuff in there, and probably the motor is stiff. The chain is stiff. It hasn't been used in over a year, and I probably didn't lubricate it enough. It was frozen up, and now it's thawed out. It's moving a little bit, but there's still some links that are stiff on it. Well, I'm going to go ahead and go get some chain lube and run that back and forth up and down there a few more times and lube that chain up with some chain lube and see if we can't get everything loosened up.